So here are some healthy foods that are potentially making you sick. Now, these 3 foods that I'm going to talk about might not be as healthy as you think. They're potentially hiding microplastics, heavy processing, and they are possibly harmful additives and lower nutrients than their whole food counterparts. Now, I'm not saying that you should never, ever eat these foods ever, but I would say that you should not be falling for their health marketing traps. If we swap these foods each week, we can potentially protect against diabetes, obesity, heart disease, and more. If you lower the intake of these foods, you're lowering the intake of processed foods and harmful additives. You're lowering your intake of microplastics, and you're adding more nutrients and polyphenols if you swap these for the suggestions that I have for you. Number 1 is swap tea bags for loose leaf tea. Now, tea has many benefits. I love tea, particularly green tea. It has a chemical called ECGC. It's a type of catkin that we know is anti-inflammatory. We know that drinkers of green tea that we tend to find in countries in Asia and India tend to have lower risks of cancer, all things being considered. We know it's a really healthy staple. I love tea, and there are caffeinated versions as well as decaffeinated versions if you are sensitive to caffeine. But the issue with tea comes down to the tea bag. Now, tea bags are potentially a haven for microplastics. So microplastics are plastic debris or polymeric matrices varying in size. Many tea bags, unfortunately, are made with plastic-based materials like polypropylene or PP, and these release microplastics when you steep them in hot water. Plus, they potentially contain toxic chemicals like PFAS and typically hide lower quality tea leaves as well. So we actually did a tea tasting at a really reputable tea company in London. They're called Tea2U. And they told us that basically the manufacturers that put their tea in tea bags are actually hiding the quality. Whereas if you go for a loose leaf tea, it's slightly more expensive, but you're getting a lot more bang for your buck. And you can actually physically see the tea leaves, their whole form, their structure. So you know that you're getting a high quality product. There was one study testing 6 tea brands, and they found that 5 of them included plastics in the tea in varying amounts. Now, the issue isn't the fact that you have these tiny, tiny bits of microplastics in the odd tea that you might choose to have with a tea bag. The issue is accumulation. It's not usually a big deal if you use them once in a while. If I go to someone's house and they offer me a tea, I'm not going to ask them, is this a plastic-free tea bag? I'm only going to have loose leaf tea. A one-off every now and then is absolutely fine. But since tea is the second most popular drink after water, and almost all tea is sold in bags, it's pretty concerning. And based on the literature and US dietary data, Americans are estimated to consume 74 to 121,000 microplastics. And that's measured in microns, and that's annually from food and air. So if you look at the tea bags that I've got up here, these are the things that you want to avoid, and I would certainly go for the loose leaf teas. And it's super simple. It's a lot cheaper actually when you start getting used to using the tea materials that are made out of stainless steel as well. So I highly, highly recommend you go for those as well. Now, the health risks are not fully clear, as many studies are looking at the accumulation of microplastics in animals or cell models, but researchers certainly suggest that they could contribute to oxidative stress, toxicity to your cells, chronic inflammation. And we know that chronic inflammation is the foundation for a lot of the lifestyle-related illnesses that we see. So things like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, type 2, and obesity as well. There is definitely an inflammatory component to a lot of these lifestyle illnesses. And if the microplastics are accumulating in our products and our foods are contributing to that, then there's a reasonable suggestion that that is in part related to things that we consume on a daily and annual basis as well. And there is potentially an increased risk of cancer as well with these microplastics. Now, because of the way tea is steeped in hot water at around 90 to 95 degrees centigrade, even food-grade plastics can break down or release these harmful microplastic materials when they're heated in this way. Anything over 40 degrees centigrade can lead to this leaching of the product into the water that you ultimately consume. And because microplastics are found in so many other sources, it adds to the cumulative exposure that builds up over time. So we find it in on our chopping boards. We find it in our cookware. We buy food that's packaged in plastic. We consume a lot of drinks outside of the house in plastic bottles. The water that we drink, unfortunately, has a ton of microplastics in because of the fact that there is so much plastic rubbish in our oceans. So you can just see that this accumulative exposure just builds and builds up over time. And if we can do something to the second most popular drink after water, then it stands to reason that we should be swapping these tea bags for loose leaf tea. One of the issues when talking about microplastics is that you can't see them. So as I'm drinking this water here, unfortunately, I know that there will be some microplastics in this, some nanoparticles, because A, I'm living in London, B, this hasn't been fully filtered, and C, the filter that we do use in the studio is made out of plastic, and we're actually going to be changing that as well very soon to a glass carafe. But you can't see the plastic that you're accumulating here. There is no measure of plastic that is commercially available. And if you look at this review study, we know from accumulation that it can also affect your gut microbiota. That may be in part why it can affect inflammation levels as well. If we are poisoning our gut microbiota, which is one of the most important ecosystems, not just for us, but for the entire planet, then it stands to reason that we are leading to more oxidative stress that can put us at higher risk of all the other lifestyle-related illnesses that I just spoke through. So the microplastics that we're talking about isn't just in tea, it's just a reminder, actually. So I would say if you're thinking about the tea that you're most likely drinking, as most of us are tea drinkers, constantly question yourself, where are the microplastics in my day-to-day, and what can I do to mitigate that as much as possible? Because we know that there is a potential risk of chronic diseases. All right, the second swap is granola for whole oats. Now, I had a scenario with my dad, actually, who I'm trying to get to eat more fiber. And he reasonably sent me an image of a granola that was oat based. I said to him, oats are great. You should definitely get more oats in your diet. And so he went to the store and then he found something that said oats on the packaging. And it was an oat based granola cereal. I won't name the brand. But when you look at the ingredients list and you look at the degree of processing and you look at the added sugar, of which there is sugar, fructose syrup, apple puree concentrate, cherry juice concentrate, cherry puree, rice flour. I mean, like the list goes on with the number of sugars in this. Aside from the fact that this is highly processed, there's going to be a lot of sugar in it. So you have these health halos for a lot of products, unfortunately, that claim that they have oats in, but not in the form that we should be consuming them in. And the form that you want to be consuming them in are pinhead oats or steel cut oats. These are really, really robust grains. They take at least 25 to 30 minutes at a minimum to cook. These are the types of oats that have all the studies shouting their praises, not, unfortunately, the highly processed granolas that we tend to find on supermarket shelves. I'm a big fan of oats. They're a great source of soluble fibers, beta-glucans. We know that the beta-glucan component is something that can reduce cholesterol, in particular LDL cholesterol, which when raised can lead to cardiovascular disease, an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. We know that it has some polyphenols, it has minerals that can support a beneficial gut microbiota, so definitely something that I recommend, and it can improve the diversity of our gut microbes because our gut microbes love munching on those different types of fibers. But the type of oat makes a huge, huge difference, and these granolas and other oat-based cereals and cereal bars and oat milks are unlikely to provide the same benefits, purely because they are more processed. The more you process oats, so the more you go from this fella over here to this, brandish, like very garish brand over here on my left. They completely change in terms of the physiological and biological effects in your body. They disrupt the structural integrity of this oat kernel, which speeds up the digestion of the starches and it can prevent some of those benefits of oats, particularly for blood sugar levels. So what happens when you eat this is you have a nice steady glucose level, particularly if you have it with things like berries and a good healthy source of fat, like a good full fat yogurt, for example, some nuts and seeds. This is going to be great for your blood sugar levels. If you have the granola, on the other hand, it's going to be a lot quicker in terms of changing your blood sugar levels, because the way you absorb the starches is going to be a lot quicker. It's going to be much more rapid. They tend, like I said, to also have added sugar. 15 to 20 grams per 100 grams is a lot of sugar when it's added, and with different names, like you've just heard me say: golden syrup, rice syrup, date syrup, sugar, sugar, sugar. That's the way you should be thinking about those names. It's sugar. It sounds healthier when you say molasses or a date syrup, or something that has a fruit in front of it, like a cherry puree. It's the same thing. It's sugar, unfortunately, because you're stripping out all the fiber. That means that you're just going to be absorbing the natural sugars, but it's still sugar. And the additional issue are going to be the emulsifiers and the flavorings as well. I can't point to direct effects on how they are disruptive to the microbiota, but I'm a pragmatist, and I think the unknown effects of these processed foods are something that I don't want to be playing around with. So I would aggressively try and remove as many of these products from our daily diets as possible, and have them as luxury items that if you want to have at the weekend, you want to have once or twice a month, great. But as a daily staple, which these are marketed as, I would say probably not the best for us. As an aside, I'd also say there is a spectrum of these different types of products, right? So it really depends on what we're comparing this with. Compared to really poor quality cereals, a quality granola with minimal ingredients is going to be more nutritious. But when you compare it for whole oats and those toppings like nuts, flax seeds, chia, coconut flakes, spices, whole fruits, there is no comparison. And I would say if you do like the flavor and the texture of a granola, you can make your own at home with ingredients that you know that you're putting into the product itself. And if you want some recommendations, click somewhere here. We'll put the app link in the bio, and you can check out all of our granola recipes that are super easy to make if you like the texture of granola. And I would highly recommend you use jumbo oats or steel cut pinhead oats. Just a quick one. If you're enjoying this kind of content, you will love our free newsletter called Seasonal Sundays. It goes into depth on a seasonal ingredient every Sunday, and we talk about the nutritional medicine benefits, the research, and the culinary uses of an ingredient every Sunday with recipes included. You can get access to the free newsletter in the link just down below. The third swap I would make is fruit-flavored snacks. Swap those for the whole fruits that they're trying to disguise themselves as. So these kind of products, fruit bars, the fruit slices that are low calorie, that usually is the slogan that you see. They claim to have things like natural sugars, one of your 5 a day, one of the things that is really grinds my gears. And although they're likely better than typical biscuits and sweets and other sugary snacks, they are definitely not a daily staple for health, particularly when you compare them to whole fruits and vegetables that are equally expensive. They're high in added sugars, they're highly processed fruits and unlikely to have the benefits of whole fruits because you're stripping out one of the best things about them, which is the fiber, and they tend to have a lot of artificial flavorings as well as preservatives that can also potentially disrupt the gut microbiota as well. And when you swapped to whole fruits, berries, kiwis, oranges, apples, whatever's in season, you're likely to have many more benefits of those different types of fibers in the whole foods than you are the sort of fruit-based processed foods that have the health halo around them. Some of the fruit leathers that you can make them at home yourself, actually, from odds and ends of different fruits and stuff. But the issue I have with them is not the product itself, it's just the speed at which you can consume them. So you've probably had kids who unravel a fruit leather, which is dehydrated, a lot of the water's been taken out, and they can absolutely engulf these things, and correspondingly they'll get quite a bit of a sugar high. Now, those are much better than the sweets and cakes and biscuits that you can find that are often marketed to kids. but I would say that they are probably in the medium category, and I would still go for the whole fruit over those types of products. The reason why is because there is a lot more in the whole product itself, even if your kids don't immediately go after the whole foods. I think there's a bit of a process to try and coax them into appreciating some of the bitter tones of fruits and vegetables that will pay off in the long run. So whilst those are a good in between, I would just be careful at the speed at which some kids can actually consume these. And the other sort of fruit flavored snacks as well, whenever anything is packaged and has a label on it, I would just be quite careful about whether this is actually something that is healthful or not. And the signs that you're going to be looking out for are whether it's shouting about the fact that it is high in protein, high in fiber, or one of your 5 a day. Those, for me, are red flag, red flag, red flag. Now, it's unfortunate that whole fruits can't have those health halos, those sort of 1 of your 5 a day, because they should. And that's actually what we should be enticing people with. Those whole foods are what we should be consuming much more of versus the sort of pretenders. So that's my little spiel on whole fruits. I also want you to consider what you're comparing your products with. So it's easy for me to say, don't have anything that's processed at all and just go for the whole foods. But we find ourselves in different scenarios. We find ourselves in different situations where it's impossible to even choose the whole foods. So it really comes down to the comparison and what your choices are. One of your choices is not to consume it and to fast. One of your choices is to wait until you can find somewhere where you can find something that's actually healthy. But sometimes that's all you have, and you have to make the choice between something that's not great and something that's really bad. And that's something that we need to be a lot more compassionate with ourselves about. Even I find myself in scenarios where I'm craving something sweet on the go. And in that scenario, I will choose something like a protein bar with very simple ingredients and some whole foods that I actually recognize. That's probably going to be a better choice than a candy bar or just some simple sweets. So when you learn these health reflexes and you opt for something that has a source of protein, a source of fiber, a source of fat with minimal ingredients, then that's what you need to opt for. And remember, you also have fasting as a choice as well. Protein is having a moment where everyone wants to have more and more protein in their diet. I think protein is important, but these are the healthiest types of proteins that I think you should be consuming, as well as the unhealthiest types of protein that you should be avoiding. Check it out right there.